सड़क सुरक्षा अभियान में आपका एक बार फिर स्वागत है। शब्दों का हेर फेर तो आसान होता है, लेकिन अपनी सुरक्षा के साथ हेरा फेरी करना बहुत ही खतरनाक हो सकता है। हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं सदगुरु जी, और आज उनसे बात आध्यात्म की नहीं हो रही है, बल्कि रफ्तार की हो रही है, सड़क की हो रही है, रूल्स ऑफ ड्राइविंग की हो रही है। सदगुरु, as I was talking earlier, that it is when you get a machine in your hand and you feel empowered. There are nitty-gritties of driving which you can probably talk about today. That what you think one should not forget, and how do you become almost mindful of driving when you have got such a powerful machine at your disposal? How do you exercise responsibility while you are empowered?
So that's a very important aspect. There are, when I used to fly hang gliders, I lived through that. And later on, I got my aviation license. There is a saying among aviators, not commercial pilots, but people who fly those machines which are dangerous by nature.
Yeah.
So among us, the thing is, there are old pilots and bold pilots. There are no old, bold pilots. So I'm an old rider. That means not that I'm afraid of something, it is just that you always know your limit. You don't try to ride like somebody else. This is one big problem with the youth. They try to ride like somebody else. We don't know what that somebody is. Whether he's a far more skilled rider or he's protected by some angel, you don't know. You don't try to do what somebody else is doing. You ride within your limits, then a lot of things can be avoided. This is one important aspect. Another aspect is, see, there is also limit to your machine. See, right now I see all these small little, I don't know if it is a brand name, I don't want to mention it, it's those little, not even a scooter, smaller than that, their wheels are this much. Like I'm riding a powerful machine, these guys in the cities are riding at the same speed. That machine is not designed for that. You're not supposed to ride it that way. So if anything happens a little challenging situation, you're going to just go and crash. This will very easily happen. So knowing the limits of the machine and the person and the person that you're riding is most important if you want to not get into those situations.
But Sadhguru, how does one… of course, there are different powers and different… there are some machines who are very powerful, some are very utilitarian. Now, there are two aspects to it. One is the one who is riding, another is the rules which are imposed on you. India is growing as a country very rapidly. We are almost leapfrogging into, we saw how technology has come into information technology here in this country, how phones have… and same thing is happening to automobile. Infrastructurally, we are also rapidly growing. But while we go through this transition, while this chaos is all around us, what is that will help us in this transition period? Is it the government? Is it the individual? Where should we begin with? Where should we try to correct this? Because the problem is real. 67% of the people who have died on the road accident, the bikers, were not wearing helmets. Now, it is telling us something, that probably we are not going hand in hand with development. What is the solution? Where to begin with?
See, one thing is the kind of helmets that are given to you. Well, one is a open-face helmet and is a full-face helmet. Full-face helmet is needed if you're riding at a certain speed, if you're riding highways and stuff. In the city, if you're riding at a reasonable, sensible speed, it may not be a must, but sometimes it becomes necessary. But above all, now the helmets that we are wearing are models of racing helmets, that if you crash at 250, 300 kilometers per hour, it must withhold that kind of pressure and that kind of crash capabilities. But in this weather, asking that guy who's delivering your food to wear a helmet and live in that helmet for an entire 12-hour duty that he does is torture. You can say what you want. He will throw his helmet, he's carrying it on his handle, further enhancing the risk of accident. He's carrying the full-face helmet on his handle and riding. Because you wear a helmet and walk around in Mumbai in the month of April, May, you will know it's sheer torture. So I've been suggesting this, but when I spoke to the manufacturers, helmet manufacturers, I said for India, most people are not crossing 80 kilometers per hour on their motorcycles, because most motorcycles are below 150 cc. They're not going to fly off like that. So for them, if the motorcycle is 100 cc or less, why can't you make… You can easily make plastic helmets which are strong, which can have a facial support also, with lots of vents where they can breathe. Right now, if you don't understand what I'm saying, just wear a helmet. I wear a helmet wherever I'm driving because I'm driving a big machine. The moment you enter the city, if you get stuck in the traffic, you want to throw it away because you're sweating. You're just going through and through, okay? So it is simply not practical to wear a proper safety helmet, a racing safety helmet and drive in an Indian city when the temperatures are over 35, 40 degrees centigrade. So we must accommodate this. Well, somebody will argue, this doesn't fulfill the European safety standards, but you are not in Europe. You are not in the temperature, nor are you at that speed. On highways, one kind of thing, otherwise below 100 cc, one kind of helmet. More powerful motorcycles, another kind of helmet will make a lot of difference. One reason why they're not wearing is it's quite impossible to wear that.
So you're saying that there is a design problem there. We are almost imposing the designs brought from the other countries, and you're feeling that they will work in India. Considering the climate conditions and the way people are here, we should think of designing our helmets, and not only helmets, other gear afresh. You are suggesting that?
Yes.
So,
when we come to the helmet, you must understand, helmets were used only on racetracks and rallies. Helmets became common road usage only in the last 35 to 40 years, even in other countries, even in Europe and America. Even now in America, in many states, if you're over 18 years of age, you don't have to wear a helmet. This is the law. If you're over 18 years of age, no need for a helmet. If you're riding a scooter, no need for a helmet in most cities in America. But if you're riding a big motorcycle, which can hit 100 miles or over, then you must wear a proper helmet, which I think is a sensible, flexible rule. But our conditions are very different. See, we are counting the number of accidents. We need to count the number of new vehicles that are being added on a daily basis, millions, I think, per year. I was talking to the Traffic Inspector General of Coimbatore. He came to meet me and I was asking, like, how many accidents and deaths in Coimbatore? He said, every day 6 to 8 people, Sadhguru. I asked, what, must be just youth, most of them college-going youth, is it? He said, no, Sadhguru, that's not how it is. Most of them are over 60, 65 years of age. I said, how does this happen? They said, all their life they've been riding a bicycle or walking or taking a bus. Suddenly they get little money, retirement or something, they'll end up buying a scooty or a moped or something. These are the people who are dying because they have no sense of what is a rule. They don't know what the rules are.
So on one hand, you're saying that, of course, the rules have to be taught, and so you are suggesting that enough induction into getting onto the street.
Training. We need to train people.
So you are suggesting that we should, increase the training programs and stuff like that. So what about the training programs for the pedestrians? What about the training programs for the people who are… You yourself, in our conversation a while back, you told me about your experience of animals crossing the street, and you're riding on and how you almost escaped, जिसे बाल बाल बचना कहते हैं हम हिंदी में. You just narrow escaped it. And this is a unique problem of India, where you will feel the cattle and a lot of other things which are part of a culture, which is we have to learn to live with. What is
It's not just cattle. In South India, it's elephants on the street.
Elephants? So there is
that challenge.
Sadhguru, another thing which we people talk about, and we probably, if we were on another forum of environment and balance and how to live with nature in harmony, we would have been talking about the fact that India has taken a lot of pride in coexistence with other animals and creatures, and we still don't want to isolate ourselves and we live in harmony. Now, on one hand, it's a beautiful argument when the world is facing environment problem. On the other hand, it creates an infrastructural problem where you want to live with the animals together. So what is the solution, Sadhguru?
So one important thing, let me talk about the two-wheeler drivers or car drivers who drive fast enough. I'm saying. I can say this because in most of the highways there is no speed limit yet. That's one reason I like to drive in India. So, one important thing is people not only driving, anything in their life, people have this habit because they've passed through school system where your memory was valued more than your attention.
Yeah.
They're still trying to drive by memory. No, you have to drive by your attention. There were no marks in your school for your attention. There was only marks for your memory, isn't it? So that they think it's going to work everywhere.
But what is this autopilot then? Assigning certain tasks to your reptilian brain, getting done on autopilot. So is only mindful driving and there is no autopilot?
No, I'm not saying mindful and all this, but if you're not aware, you can fall off these 4 steps that you have to get off, right? Not that you don't know how to get off these 4 steps, but if you're not aware, you could fall off those 4 steps, and it happens to people all the time. So when you're driving, particularly in India, where there are many unexpected situations, things that you cannot imagine could be happening on the road, okay? You would have never imagined such a thing is possible, such things will happen. And about life, because if you're talking about saving the number of lives, I must tell you, in about 6-7 years' time, at one time, I took 5 accident victims to the hospital. 3 of them died, 2 survived. 3 of them died means when we took them there, nobody knew what their blood group was. And when we found out the blood group, there was no blood. We ran all over the city like more worse than the food delivery people trying to get the blood. We were trying to spill our blood, riding all over the place trying to get the blood. That didn't happen. So 3 of them passed away. So I set up a blood bank. Blood bank, not like a storage. We create about 900 numbers I gathered at that time with all the important blood groups. So if we call you, there was no cell phone. This was another problem. We have to call a phone which is nearby to you. And for almost about 14 to 15 months, myself and a few of my friends started manning the casualty ward in the general hospital. Because when you bring them there, they'll ask you to put them there on the one steel table, okay?
Yeah.
Nobody will come. The doctor is busy with something else, this. There was no question of ambulance in those days. Everybody is busy with their own work, but this guy is just dying right there in front of your eyes. See, this is the problem. Most people don't want to see such things. You must see it. You must see it that the difference that you could make is between life and death. But we don't do it either because there is no sufficient arrangement or you want to look away. Looking away is never the answer. So, because of this, I set up this blood bank or blood kind of a club kind of thing that people could come and contribute when somebody is injured. Another thing is we station people to see that they get that immediate attention. Those days, immediate attention means 1.5 hours before we got them to the hospital. You pick them up and put them in the auto rickshaw, that itself will kill him if something else doesn't kill him. So one simple thing, I know this aspect was being discussed about Good Samaritan, this is very important, because with one girl who was 2 years junior to me in college, she got… she was injured, then I took her and she died. I went to the court for 5 years. Whenever they call, wherever I am traveling, I'm supposed to come back. After about 3 years, when I could not go, the police officer came home and told my father, this boy has to come, otherwise we will give an arrest warrant. My father is asking, what did you do? I said, what have I done? I took this girl to the hospital. So, That is a very important thing. I don't know how effectively it'll work because I know there are many levels of harassment. I have faced all that in many ways. There are many levels of harassment. So, this needs to be handled definitely. And above all, that quick response on the highways, because the speed is higher on the highways, the death rate is always higher than the cities. The simple thing is, you have seen in the football matches the rigid plastic, the stretcher.
Yes.
To station one stretcher, to station one, IV kit and basic things and some gauze and stuff, you don't have to know anything. You can train 25 people in a village, you can station this in a panchayat office or wherever, one government place or a post office or whatever. All you have to do is put them on a stiff stretcher, wrap them if you need it, put a belt or something if needed. If they're bleeding profusely, just hold it. If there is a nurse or a doctor, put an IV. You can save more than 50% of the lives.
Great, Sadhguru. I think what our audience must be hearing is that there's a lot in our hands that you talked about good Samaritans. And this is about, feeling responsible towards it. Despite what you went through, today even if given another, the same situation, you will do the same.
I will do the same, not because I'm a good Samaritan, because I'm human.
Yeah. So I think people are, somewhere you must be talking to the governments as well, that need to make it more simpler to save somebody's life. And saving life should be paramount in the way laws are constructed and the way they are executed. So we are in fact, Sadhguru, out of this campaign, we have one important part of this campaign which I personally worked on, is that making a kind of educating children in school, almost making it part of a textbook. How do you behave in traffic? What are the traffic rules?
Very important.
And I think at the time of school education, if we put these things in the heads of people, I've seen how kids insist that their fathers wear the seat belt, and they almost condemn them if they are not wearing. So I think there is a lot to be done at the school level, and sort of inculcating that or injecting that behavior right at the inception.
The number of deaths are way higher in rural societies than in the urban societies, because it is the highways where the vehicles are traveling at a certain speed, and the drivers are not at the same level of alertness as when they are driving in an urban center. The number of deaths, well, everybody knows the numbers today, 1.53 lakh, 153,000 people have died last year. But every 12 minutes, there is a fracture on the street. Every 4 minutes there is a fracture. Every 12 minutes there is a loss of limb. So there is a WHO report which says, India is aspiring to become a huge economic power in the world, but in another 25 years you'll be a land of cripples. Every 12 minutes somebody is losing a limb. How are you going to support these people? What is the cost of that? Making better roads, creating more rules is so much easier than bearing that cost, which is, above all, you can't ever, repay the human cost that is paid, but even the financial cost is far more expensive that way. So one important thing is signages and visibility. Visibility is a huge issue in India.
So how do you deal with literacy? How do you deal with literacy?
See, that's why I said you must convert…
So these go hand in hand?
No, you must convert most of it from words to signages, signs. See, right now, you say stop, it is a sign. You might have written stop, but maybe I can't read it. See, right now, you have a long name, it's in English, I can read English language.
Yes.
But if that is there on the street when I'm riding at a certain focus, then I can't read that, it looks like Russian to me. So it's important, clearly you say 0 kilometers, I can read that.
You're most intrigued by Russian language, it seems.
No, right now, don't get me into international politics now. I feel this injury and death that's happening on the street could be significantly brought down if… See, the road curvatures in India are not engineered properly. One reason maybe it was done long time ago when nobody even thought about that, but today vehicles are traveling at a much faster pace and they can't take those corners.
Yeah.
Most drivers are not trained to understand at what speed they can take a particular curve. They're not… it is not built into them, they're just driving. And if they think they can go like this, and if it doesn't go, they'll go and crash into something. This is one of the most common accidents on highways are this. They don't judge a curve and the speed involved. So, I think marking those curves very brightly, if necessary, solar-powered lights flashing in the night is important, because without that marking, so many lives are going. I'll tell you one example. Coimbatore-Dindigul road was being made, literally Karur-Dindigul road, which is a matter of 70-80 kilometers, I think. They took some 4 years to complete it for some reason at that time, a proper highway, good highway they made now, it's a very nice highway. It's a national highway. The day I went, one car with about 6 people, a family, one of those Innova type of cars, had crashed into a pit that they've dug 6 feet deep. And 6 people, all smashed up right there. So I stopped, looked at this and I said, what is this? Then I call up the local, first I call the local police officer, then I call the MLA and ask, what is happening? They could have marked this pit. All right, you're working, they've marked this pit. The MLA is saying, sir, what to do, sir? In the last 6 months, 40 people have died in that one pit. In one pit, 40 people die, and still you can't put up a clear enough signage, because it's a surprise. You're driving at a certain speed, suddenly there's a drop. So, this is almost like people are trying to test your spiritual intuitiveness, whether you can really see things that you cannot see or not.
So I think but Sadhguru also is important that you declare your intent. I think we sometime, all of a sudden people decide to change lanes or stuff like that. I think it's important to declare your intent. One thing I've noticed that if we know in advance that somebody is turning or somebody else's intent, is much more easier to drive. So…
Definitely.
Yeah.
That usage of indicators, changing lanes, that is still not dropped into people's minds here. But the important thing is right now, these days it's come down, but in the last 10 years, I've had many incidents when you're going on your side of the highway, suddenly one guy is coming from the opposite side.
Yeah.
Which you're not looking for, you're not even thinking that he's going to come.
Surprises.
Suddenly he surprises you,
Yeah.
which is a very dangerous process. So essentially about following rules, whether it's road or otherwise, we are still not a law-abiding nation in that sense. I will tell you my experience. Normally, when I fly back into Coimbatore, I will end up landing there 12:30, like somewhere between 10 to 1 generally, finishing the programs elsewhere and going back. Either I am riding back on a motorcycle, which is mostly these days, but otherwise in a car. So, a red light comes, I stop, no traffic. So behind me, ping, 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 I hear the horn. So I say, what? And then that guy comes here in one little moped and just does like this to me. Because he thinks I'm a fool, stopping there in the middle of the night. There is no policeman, what are you doing here? That is the message he's giving me. Then he looks at my face, oh Sadhguru, oh, photo edikalamma. Okay, I'm saying…
Yes, Sadhguru.
The thing in that lack of integrity is something that needs to be built. I think saving these lives today, there are many immediate things like that. I said the mechanics of a vehicle, especially two-wheelers, and the road condition, and training for the human beings. But because we're building such a large nation, 1.4 billion people, you're not going to solve your problems just like that.
Yes.
Okay? And the number of people who are getting onto the road, they've never driven anything in their life. Suddenly they're getting on in their midlife or in their late part of their life. Suddenly it was their dream, they bought a scooter when they're 60. So there are many issues, it's okay. This is our national problem, we need to handle it. But just by handling road signages, little bit of training, every 5 years they must renew their license, training part of it, not handled by the government, handled by private agencies, we can bring down deaths to 50% if we work on this actively.
तो सुना आपने, सड़क दुर्घटना को रोकने का सबसे कारगर तरीका है कि हम स्वयं इसकी जिम्मेदारी लें, यातायात के नियमों का पालन भी करें और शुरुआत से ही अपने बच्चों को सड़क सुरक्षा के बारे में सिखाएं तो वो सिर्फ जिम्मेदार नागरिक ही नहीं बनेंगे बल्कि सुरक्षित राहगीर भी बनेंगे।